Bum 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 bum. The Peter Like Show. Bum 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 bum. In 1998, my family and I traveled to Taiwan. My brother wasn't born yet, so the three of us traveled to Taiwan. That was the trip that made me really fall in love with Taiwan. It turned out I would have gone more after that, except for something else. I'll get to it in a second. But I had such a good time that when we came back to the United States, I I had another fascination. I used to love to dig holes in our backyard, and I swore I was going to dig a hole all the way to Taiwan because I had such a good time. I wanted to be able to jump in the hole anytime I wanted to. There was another reason I was doing the digging. I had started reading my dad's old chemistry textbooks. I learned that we had 100 and some change number of elements at the time. And I thought the reason we didn't find even bigger elements was because they were heavy. They would have sank toward the core of the earth. And I swore I was going to dig a hole big enough to find chemical element 111, which hadn't been discovered yet because it was right underneath gold on the periodic table. I also learned, and this is just a coincidence, there's really no scientific reason for that. At the time, silver was worth about 50 times more than copper, and gold about 50 times more than silver. So I assumed chemical 111 would be worth 50 times more than gold. I think gold was around $400 an ounce at the time, so I figured about $20,000 an ounce. And I remember fantasizing at that kind of price, any visible amount would be worth a fortune. And so I kept digging and digging and digging. Every time I saw something shiny, I got really excited. And so my dad was so upset that it was messing up the backyard. But when I explained that I loved Taiwan and that I was studying his chemistry books, uh, at least there was some consolation in that. I would have traveled to Taiwan more, but obviously, 3 years later, 9/11 happened. I got scared to death, and I swore I was never going to fly again. At the time, three of my grandparents were still alive, and my mom said that you got to fly at least three more times, implying that I had to go to their funerals someday. And so I said, you know what? I love road trips. Maybe I could drive to Taiwan someday. We'll have a bridge over the Bering Strait someday. My dad said, are you crazy? You're not even going to survive one trip to Taiwan. And the truth is that in my lifetime, I've driven the equivalent of that distance a few times, and I've gotten into too many car accidents to count, right? No, it's a lot safer to fly, that's for sure. And then I said, well, you know what? Maybe one of these days, flights to Taiwan will be really quick, right? Take 20, 30 minutes to fly to Taiwan. It would be like a scary theme park ride. I love theme parks. My dad said, yeah, that might be possible. And I said, let's just hope my grandparents live longer so that we can have faster flights to Taiwan. And we left the conversation like that. Unfortunately, 2 years after 9/11, another flying machine capable of flying to Taiwan in 20 minutes also it had its own disaster. And as a result, I didn't want to fly for 7 more years after that, if you could believe it. Now, I recently met a distant cousin of Mary Curry, or of Eve Curry. I call her Eve Curry because she's half Polish and she loves literature. And when I saw her birthday, on when she added me on Facebook and I saw her birthday, it reminded me of the trip to Taiwan I took with my family and how great a time I had there. And unfortunately, those two disasters really struck me wrong, and I didn't want to fly. I wish I could have all those years back where I didn't fly. I really missed out on a lot of stuff. This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.